What is the most largely believed piece of misinformation? In middle school, my world geo teacher asked the class what the world's biggest desert was. For some reason, I knew the answer, so I raised my hand and said Antarctica. All of my classmates started laughing and one or two called me dumb. My teacher let some others answer, to which they said the Sahara, and afterwards she walked over to her desk and got a stuffed bunny that she gave to me for getting it right. I named him Bobby Flay. I lived in Texas. The local news described our weather as a haboob, which is a common meteorological term for a sandstorm. It means strong wind but is a strong wind in a sandy area, so you get sandstorm. I'd like to think they were trolling us because they had a guy ranting about using an Arabic term for a sandstorm. He was from Nimrod, TX. Edit, I was close. Here's an actual article about it with details. It was a woman from Nimrod who was bewailing the use of haboob. But it was def a haboob. And thus why the word Nimrod has become used to mean slow-witted or incompetent. But yeah, it's incredible how many changes of meaning came about due to misunderstanding. A similar example is in the Maltese Falcon. Sam Spade disparagingly refereed to one of Gutman's man as a goonsel. A slang term basically meant a young male prostitute, but his audiences weren't aware of its meaning, and presumably cause it contains the word gun, it became used to refer to a hitman for quite a while. When I was a young veterinarian, a client asked if they could give their cat milk. I explained no, water was better, here's why, etc. And then they said they wanted to do something else besides water. Could I, make cat juice? Thinking I was funny, I said, yeah, maybe if you squeeze really hard. You could have heard a pin drop in that room. They always asked for another doctor after that. I look after a cat who won't drink water on its own, but she will lap it up if it's mixed in with her wet food. You can also buy soups for cats. Some of them can be really picky about drinking. I've even seen Prosecco, which is supposedly a wine equivalent for cats, but that's just silly. Shame that client really didn't understand your humor. EMT here. Boy, are there a lot, but the one that comes to mind is that if someone is having a seizure, you need to put something in their mouth so they don't swallow their tongue. This is false for a few reasons. It is physically impossible to swallow your tongue. Go ahead and try, it's attached on pretty well. Putting something in a seizure patient's mouth will only introduce a choking hazard. Now the patient has two problems. Seizure patients bite and they bite hard. So if your fingers are in the patient's mouth when that bite happens, your patient will again have two problems and medical staff will have two patients. Edit, okay, since this comment is blowing up, I'm gonna go ahead and put what you should do. So for our purposes, we're referring to grand mal or generalized seizures. For seizure patients, lay them on their side and hold their head so they don't hit it on the ground. This was a reply to another comment, but I'll add a few other things. Call 911 immediately if any of these criteria are met. 1. It's their first seizure. 2. The seizure lasts longer than 5 minutes. At this point, it affects their breathing and perfusion. 3. You don't know the seizure patient. 4. They have several short, 1 to 2 minutes will say seizures in rapid succession with short recovery periods. 5. If you're unsure and have no medical training, feel free to just call. No one will blame you. Don't move the patient unless there is an immediate hazard to them. People who are prone to seizures can usually tell you when they're about to have one or what will trigger it. They also know what triggers them, so 8 if someone says if I do X I'll have a seizure, believe them. I learned this one the hard way. Also, recovery will be very slow, the patient will be exhausted, in all likelihood they won't even remember they had a seizure. Cheers, Internet. Epileptic here. The amount of times I've had to yell at friends/coworkers to just leave me alone while seizing is insane. You can't stop my muscles from jerking or twitching. You can't make me eat/drink, sometimes I'm making choking noises, so asking me to do so is counterintuitive. Tongue's heal, let me bite it. I'll be sore for a few days, then I'm fine. I promise that you peers, not you, don't know more than what my neurologists have advised me to do and not to do. Okay. So how I explained it to my boyfriend and others when first meeting me, the best way I can. You know that feeling that you get when you're tipsy, and you know you need to slow down? Semi-cognitive. That's how I get when I aura, which I do not always do before seizures, and migraines. For example, when my ex-fiancé and I were together, he never called me by my first name unless we were arguing. So if he noticed me acting a bit slower, motor skill-wise, or forgetting how to do something simple, like plug in my phone charger, he'd call me my nickname first, think Liz instead of the given Elizabeth, and if I didn't respond, he'd try my given name to see if he could get me to respond to that. I'll have muscle spasms in my face frequently, so that will cause the vertigo-esque vision impairment I'll get during The only thing you can do to help me is if possible, take my glasses off for me, and get me to sit/lie down. Resting a few seconds and drinking a glass of water is my only remedy. Edited to add, I have petit mal seizures, or focal seizures. I've only convulsed a dozen times or so in the 20-something year history of my seizures. I teach 6th grade social studies and a student dispelled me of some common ignorance. The Cape of Good Hope is not the southernmost tip of Africa. I was inculcating a new generation with that nonsense and this student pointed out a spot on Google Earth that looked further south. We looked it up and sure enough it was a misnomer, a spot east of the Cape is slightly further south. Neither is the Pentagram inherently satanic either. Only sigil of Baphomet or goat of Mendes is, which is an inverted pentacle with a goat's head on it. A pentagram is actually a pagan symbol. Like someone else has mentioned, the Leviathan cross is also not really satanic. In fact, other than being the sulfur symbol, it's a mix of two other symbols. The infinite symbol and, a once again Christian cross, cross of Lorraine, patriarchal cross. The devil wasn't crucified, what would he need a cross for? Edit, turns out the goat of Mendes isn't inherently satanic either. It was taken by the Church of Satan in the mid-60s when it was originally formed, however it dates back to the late 1800s. Okay, so I completely agree with it being St. Peter's cross, but, since we are talking about symbolism, isn't it possible that the misunderstanding made this falsehood true? If enough people start believing an inverted cross is a satanic symbol, then it becomes a satanic symbol regardless of whether it is also a Christian symbol. This is it. The swastika doesn't change meaning for most people just because it is much older than Nazism. It's still used in other cultures, sure, because the thing about symbolism is it's all very relative to the person using the symbol and the person viewing the symbol. The intent of the upside-down cross doesn't change because of St. Peter's crucifixion, and trying to combat its obvious implication based on that is pretty pedantic. It's not misinformation, it's the evolution of something's meaning over time. I just recently read several articles to my husband about this. He works in oil and gas and most definitely has drank their Kool-Aid, believing their environmental propaganda. He refused to believe it at first until I pulled up citation after citation. He still is very skeptical and now believes the bullshit that they are building better recycling facilities that will be able to recycle 100% of plastics by 2050. There's two issues with recycling. The first is that when looking at global pollution and what actually destroys ecosystems and increase climate change, trash is a relatively small issue. Recycling is used as a scapegoat to detract attention away from the pollution done by the industrial sector. A good analogy is that trying to eliminate pollution by having people reduce their emissions and recycle is akin to trying to become a millionaire by collecting coins off the pavement. Yes, every penny found does count and get you closer to your goal, but the difference it makes is negligible. The second issue is that recycling is basically a giant masquerade. There's so much effort put into labeling plastics for sorting and giving people blue garbage bins dedicated for recycling, yet they just end up together with the regular trash in landfills. Most cities can't afford sorting recyclables, but even those that do, no businesses is interested because the recycling process is significantly more expensive.